Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this Edward Jones webinar, Balancing Long-Term and Short-Term Financial Goals. My name is Sandy Miller, and I am excited to have two industry professionals on our panel today, and I'll introduce them in just a minute. But before we get going, let me highlight a few of the features on your screen that we'll be using. On your screen right now, you should already see a video window with me inside. There should be another window with our presentation slides, and then a third window for our Q&A feature. If for some reason you have any difficulty during the program, you can click on the help icon at the bottom of your screen. That's the black question mark inside the yellow circle. This is for any technical questions you may have. We also have a team on standby ready to assist you if at any time during our discussion you have a question or would like clarification on a point. Just click on the Q&A icon, which is the third button from the left at the bottom of your screen. That will allow you to send in your questions. We'll do our best to answer your questions in the allotted time we're given. If your question is not answered, though, please follow up with your Edward Jones Financial Advisor. If you don't have an Edward Jones Financial Advisor, please click on the Find an FA widget below. We also have a lot of helpful resources and information available for you inside the resources icon, which is located next to the Q&A icon. All right, now that you know your way around, let's get started. While your financial strategy most likely includes enjoying your retirement, there are many stops and events along the way, vacations, weddings, perhaps a home renovation that also could be important to you and your family. So how do you achieve and finance your short-term interests without hindering your progress toward longer-term financial goals like retirement and estate planning? As I mentioned, we've brought together industry professionals to offer guidance on how to be strategic about identifying and prioritizing your short-term and long-term goals and appropriate financing options so that you can enjoy your life now without compromising your future plans. I'd like to introduce Edward Jones investment analyst Kyle Harpin and Edward Jones financial advisor Jesse Abercrombie. And Kyle, I'm going to start with you. Let's take a moment to level set here. What are some client and investor concerns around setting and balancing these two types of goals?
Of course. A client has long-term goals like saving for education, saving for retirement, and estate planning. And they've probably been working with their financial advisor on these goals for years. But other goals come up that are more immediate in nature that they're also interested in financing, like taking a big trip, paying for a loved one's wedding, or working toward their dream home. And in that case, clients have two overarching questions. One, how do I achieve those short-term goals without throwing my long-term goals off track? And two, how am I going to pay for this? They've likely saved or are saving for retirement and have some funds set aside. But at this time, they may not have everything they need to achieve their shorter-term goals.
Jesse, can you expand on that? When a client asks, how am I going to pay for this? What are some of the ensuing discussions that take place?
Yeah, like Kyle said, they're wondering what they have to do with their finances to really achieve those short-term goals. Should they sell investments from their investment portfolio, or do they consider borrowing along with it? Or do they have cash on hand? So my role in helping them answer those questions is to first take a step back and look at their overall strategy as it relates to their goals. And it's not enough to simply just identify the goals. We've got to weigh in on the trade-offs and really prioritize them.
Prioritizing makes sense. So Kyle, let's talk a little bit about the first step for clients and investors, mapping out exactly what they want.
Sure. After a client decides what they want to achieve, it comes down to determining how much the client wants to spend on something, and then time. When do they hope to achieve that goal? For example, maybe they'd like to make remodeling their kitchen a priority. We recommend that they do some research up front. Get an idea of the cost through online searches, calling experts, or even asking friends. You don't need an exact dollar amount yet either. a rough estimate can work. Next, they need to consider the timing of their goal. Knowing that they want to do the kitchen remodel in 18 months, for example, helps give us a picture of how you can pay for it. For instance, you might find that you can save some additional funds towards the kitchen remodel, which will ultimately bring down the amount of investments you'll need to sell or the amount of money you'll need to borrow to fund it.
And Jesse, now that clients and investors have identified their goals and potential costs, let's review some of their available financing options, starting with using cash or savings.
Yeah, you start by using funds that you have intentionally saved for this goal. After all, it's why you save for them. It's not enough to consider cash you may have that's above your need for spending in emergency savings. So perhaps you received a tax refund and you don't have any plans for this cash. This cash likely isn't earning much, and it could be used to reduce the amount that you'll need to raise from other sources. So one of the analyses that I perform for my clients is called an interest earned versus interest paid analysis. Here, I'll put together an amortization schedule based on the loan amount to determine the amount of interest that they're going to pay over the life of the loan. And then next, I'll calculate the amount of the loan, assuming the same interest rate. But this would be on the money earned if they kept their portfolio invested. So more often than not, my clients' investments over a 15 or 20 or 30-year period will earn significantly more than they would pay the bank or financing company. So this helps the client make the right long-term decision. It's important also to assess the amount of debt that the client currently has, the time horizon, and what rates of interest they're analyzing. Clients with a lot of debt, short-term time horizons, and higher rates may be better off using the cash so that they're not over-leveraged.
Kyle, if extra cash isn't available, is borrowing an option an investor might take?
It could be, but it should be weighed against other options the client has, like selling investments. If an investor goes the route of borrowing, there are some things they should be on the lookout for when obtaining a loan. First, look for a loan with a low interest rate. Also, try to reduce the fees associated with the loan as much as possible, or look for a loan without fees. Also, consider loan attributes that are easier to plan around, like a fixed rate, a loan that amortizes, and one that's paid off in a reasonable amount of time. There are also some best practices that you can employ to help the loan work within your financial strategy. First, always make the minimum payment on all your debts. Then, before borrowing, make a plan to pay off your loan. To make this easier, automate your plan by using bill pay or automatic transfers so you don't even have to think about making the payment. Finally, try to keep your debt levels lower. Many lenders look at debt to income ratios, which you can calculate by dividing your monthly debt payments by your monthly gross income. Try to keep your debt to income ratio below 35% if you're including a mortgage, and less than 20% if you're not. Also, individuals with credit scores above 740 are generally able to access loans at favorable rates and terms.
Kyle mentioned that selling investments is another option investors may have. Jesse, can you speak more to that?
Yeah, sure. Depending on an investor situation, selling investments to fund a short-term goal may or may not make sense for them. If an investor decides that selling investments is the route they want to go, there's some things to keep in mind when doing so. So first of all, costs. You may want to consider whether these investments have a penalty or high cost associated with selling them. I rarely recommend investments that have a cost associated with the sale, but if the client does, we tend not to sell those investments. Consider taxes. Connect with your financial advisor and a tax professional to determine how selling these investments could affect your overall taxes. Also ask if selling may cause you to exceed key thresholds, like those Medicare net investment income tax, Medicare surcharges, and Social Security taxability thresholds. If the client has to pay a significant tax bill, then it just doesn't make sense to sell those investments. I also prefer to call the client's CPA to see if they have any losses that would offset gains in the portfolio. Recently, I had a CPA indicate to me that it made sense for the client to sell gains in the portfolio due to some losses that existed during the tax year. And then the last thing to consider are the mix of investments. It's important to pay attention to the balance of your portfolio. Your asset allocation was set up to align with your goals and your risk tolerance. And if it does get out of alignment, make sure to rebalance it back to your personalized target allocation. Also be mindful of what investments are being sold. This year the markets are a little volatile, to say the least. And so I'd rarely sell investments in the portfolio that are down.
Kyle, what drawbacks might exist for those borrowing and selling investments?
While these options have the benefit of helping you pay for your goal, there are some drawbacks to be aware of. With borrowing, you'll have to repay the loan with interest, which can add up over time. There may also be other costs and fees with the loan that will be paid for in time as well. Depending on the amount one borrows, it may also limit their ability to borrow at a reasonable rate in the future. And that could be at a time when they really need it. Selling investments comes with drawbacks as well. By selling from your portfolio, you lose the potential for the investments to grow. If these funds were previously dedicated to another goal, you could lose progress towards that goal as well. You may also have to pay taxes or fees on the transaction, depending on your situation. Your financial advisor can help you think through these and balance the costs of selling investments or borrowing against the benefit of achieving your short-term goal. You don't want to create problems for yourself down the road, but as one of our financial advisors advised me, you also don't want to live poor and die rich.
That makes sense. I think this discussion we're having is quite timely, given what we know about the psychological state so many are experiencing today. Kyle, has the pandemic had any implications for our clients and other investors now planning for short-term and long-term goals?
Since the pandemic, we've seen a greater awareness of people's entire financial picture coming to life. Building out a 3 to 6 month emergency fund, for example, and how to incorporate that with other goals. Once you build out the core of your financial strategy, things like your emergency fund, saving for retirement, and making sure your debt levels are in check, you may want to think more about and building out your short-term goals. Having a solid footing with your financial strategy can help you stay on track with both your short and your long-term goals when the unexpected occurs. Anecdotally, I've also heard that some investors are apprehensive to borrow for their shorter-term goals for fear that the unexpected may occur. If that thought of having debt is mentally burdensome to you, you may want to think of another way to fund your goal. If that's the case, talking with your financial advisor about your entire financial plan can be helpful.
Jesse, at the heart of this, what are you hearing from clients who perhaps feel they can't do both, achieve both their short-term and long-term goals? Are they feeling like it's one or the other?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what's very important is really to find out what's most important to the client. If they have short-term goals that are not accomplished, that makes them concerned or it makes them lose sleep at night, we tend to focus first on accomplishing those goals while making sure that we're also addressing those other goals, like the long-term goals. So in a recent study by AgeWave, we found that current retirees that really started planning for retirement at the age of 34, they're much happier now and they feel more purpose, they're more engaged, and they're more fulfilled in retirement. So I really stress the importance of making sure that they find balance. Ultimately, the client's going to make the final decision, but it is my role as their financial advisor to help them make sound financial decisions around their financial goals and around their objectives.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot today, but let's bring that all to life with some scenario planning. Kyle, why would a financial advisor even engage in that with their clients?
So scenario modeling essentially lets you play out different potential futures for yourself, tinkering with different choices you can make now, and then pick the one that best aligns with your values and wishes. And it's important because there's no exact formula for what's most important to a specific client. We're all going to answer that question a little bit differently. So by running different scenarios, it lays out a clearer picture of how a client can go about achieving those goals.
Okay, so let's build out a few scenarios.
Yes, let's have some fun with this. Take, for example, Mark and Jessica, who are 40 years old. Like most people, Mark and Jessica have a longer-term goal of retiring on their terms. For them, that means retiring at age 65 with a portfolio that can provide $80,000 of income in retirement. However, they just set a shorter-term goal of remodeling their kitchen in 2 years. They estimate their dream kitchen remodel to cost $40,000. So let's look at some options they have for achieving their goals. First, they could focus their efforts on remodeling their kitchen as they've dreamed. For this, they save $1,600 a month towards the kitchen, but contribute $900 a month to retirement, which is less than what they need to retire on time. Because of this, instead of retiring at 65, they would likely have to wait until 66 to build their desired retirement portfolio. Conversely, they could contribute $2,100 to retirement and $400 to their remodel monthly, which would allow them to retire at age 65. However, in this case, their kitchen fund would amass to only $10,000, which is significantly below what they were hoping for. Finally, they could choose to meet somewhere in the middle, where they contribute $1,525 a month to retirement and $975 a month toward their kitchen for the next 2 years. This would allow them to retire only slightly later than expected at 65 and a half and complete a $25,000 kitchen remodel that, while still great, is lower than what they expected. Now, these are just examples, and everyone's priorities are different. So there's really not a right answer here. I could choose to go for a dream kitchen and retire later, while you, Sandy, could choose to balance both options. The important part is to be informed about how your shorter-term goals interact with your longer-term ones, and to make informed decisions based on the information you have at hand.
That's really helpful and definitely paints a picture of what we've been discussing today. So with the market being volatile recently, how does that affect an investor's position for short-term goals?
That's a great question, Sandy. Again, this is going to come down to an individual's preferences and comfort level with risk in times when the market is down. Some people are looking at inflation and deciding they want to buy sooner, while others prefer to delay a short-term goal until calmer waters arise. If an investor wants to delay their goal, then that is completely fine, and they can even use the time to build up more savings if they desire. If they want to move forward with the goal, they may want to look for opportunities in the market's ups and downs. Do you have a position in your portfolio that has declined where you may be able to recognize a loss on it? If you do, this may help lower your tax bill. Oftentimes in market volatility, your desired mix of assets can get out of balance, and you may need to rebalance to get it back to your target asset allocation. Could you use this as an opportunity to both rebalance and fund some of your goal? Again, each of these answers is going to depend on an individual's circumstances, and your financial advisor and tax professional can help. But those are some things that I will be thinking about in times of volatile markets.
So one final question for both of you. What else should our audience take away from today's webinar? And Kyle, I'll start with you.
Your short-term goals are achievable without completely sacrificing your long-term ones. You just have to make sure you're going about achieving them in an informed and strategic manner to make the situation work for you.
Yeah, I would say also the most important thing is clients should always know that they're much better off with both their short and their long-term goals if they're having open communication and open conversations with each other and their advisors. It's important that clients are on the same page with each other. It's critical. And they have an advisor as an accountability partner to help them realize their goals. There's no perfect formula when it comes to addressing their needs. However, there is a quote that I use, and the quote is, "Failing to prepare is preparing to fail." And so the prepare is the first step. And so after preparing and putting a plan together, it's important to meet at least once a year to discuss the progress being made and addressing those goals. My most satisfied clients do this, and they really feel financially empowered in the long term.
All right, great information today. Jesse, Kyle, thanks to both of you for your insight. As I mentioned earlier, we have several resources that we hope will help you during this time. Be sure to check them out by going to the resource icon on your screen. We're now going to start the Q&A portion of the program. We have a team of subject matter experts waiting online to answer your questions through the Q&A widget. Please remember that there will not be any video during this portion. You'll only see a slide prompting you that the Q&A is now in session, but rest assured the webinar is still live. We'll do our best to answer your questions during the allotted time. If your question is not answered, please follow up with your Edward Jones financial advisor. If you don't have an Edward Jones financial advisor, please click on the Find an FA widget below. I also want to remind you that this broadcast will be available again on demand using the same link you used to register for today's program. Please note our upcoming webinar as well. Thanks again for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.